Hola a todos, bienvenidos a nuestro primer video en High and Mighty. El día de hoy tenemos un video, una entrevista con Brodie Spurlock. Espero que la puedan disfrutar. Todo lo que tiene que ver con la intro, el saludo, es algo que vamos a omitir ya que los nervios hicieron que no fuera tan fluido el inglés. También les pedimos disculpas de antemano si es que el inglés no es perfecto, pero la verdad es que fue una situación muy emocionante que nos tuvo como todo el rato eufóricos porque esto saliera bien. Así que los dejamos con el video. How do you know Flesh and Blood, and if you have any experience in other TCGs?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for having me on, guys. I started playing TCGs when I was 13 years old. I actually played Magic the Gathering. My older brother used to play long before, I think before I was even born, and then I kind of got into it because of him and started going to the local game store every week, playing in Friday Night Magic and stuff. And then when the pandemic hit, I was playing a lot online, and then eventually stopped that and in 2021 discovered Flesh and Blood and tried it for the first time at the end of that year, and pretty much ever since then I've been completely hooked. I started going to armories daily and then wanting to compete as much as I could, started playing pro quests, and then one thing led to another, of course. But yeah, actually, like at this point, uh a little over 5 years playing card games, I think.
You got many important things in the game in a few years.
Yeah,
Like,
I have since I started, I've put a lot of time into it and tried to surround myself with players better than myself to do like everything I can to improve. I think the biggest contributing factor to that is just the like, especially in those early months and when I was first getting started, just like attending armories every day, just trying to surround myself with the game constantly and get exposed to all the heroes and all the strategies out there. I think just like playing so much all the time has really helped me to improve faster.
okay. And in that sense, what things do you like about the game and value about other card games?
I think some of my things with Flesh and Blood in particular that I like the most are, first of all, the community. I really do feel like of all the communities I've witnessed or been a part of, it's the most just wholesome and friendly. I feel like almost everyone I meet is just excited to meet you and talk to you and there to have a good time. Even like at the highest level when we're competing for a lot and people take it seriously, people are still really nice, and I love that about this game. And I also love that um, it really feels like a game where dedication gets rewarded, and you get paid off for practice. And of course, it's a card game, so there's variance, and that leads to infinitely more situations you have to be prepared for than um, it's kind of weird to compare it to chess, but like something like chess, they even though there are way too many situations for a human to prepare for, if you compare that to like all of the possible card combinations in Flesh and Blood, it's infinitely more. So I just think it's cool that it's such a deep game with so many possible situations that come up, but it's still, um, I would say, on the lower variance end of card games, and someone who puts a lot of time in will start to see rewards for that time spent.
Yes, that is true. I feel like when you more practice, you have more rewards through the time.
Yeah.
Here we have armories like 3 or 4 rounds. We never have a armory with top 8, semifinals, and finals. So one question that we think a lot when we saw you playing is what psychological preparation do you need to play long seasons and maintain good results?
Um, I try to do several things. I think a lot of it is just taking solid care of myself with sleep and exercise and food and everything. That's something I've tried to focus on a little bit more, especially recently, just because I'm traveling so much. And at some point, I felt like I hit a point where focusing on my like mental and physical state was going to improve my tournament results more than putting more hours into Flesh and Blood games. And so I've tried to focus on that. Um, I also think it is just realistic for me to bring up the fact that I am still young and maybe like a bit younger than a lot of the audience that plays the game. So I think that gives me um, a little bit of a stamina advantage, I guess, because I can play a long tournament and not get fatigued quite as fast. But I think a lot of it also is just practice doing that. Uh, Mental state as far as like if you get an early loss, I think working on how to not get tilted from that loss and let it affect future play is one really big thing. And that can be for a single tournament day or even a whole season. Like I've had tournaments and like I don't know months where something going wrong early on can spiral a little bit and affect the rest of my play, especially in a single tournament. Like some of my early callings, I would punt away a game, and then because I was too focused on the fact that I made a mistake, I think it led me to make more mistakes later in the day and, eventually fall out of the tournament. And I think I've gotten better, even if I make a super silly mistake and lose a game because of it. Um, I don't let that affect the rest of my play, and I just focus back and try to deal with everything after the tournament. And I would say that's one of the things that's probably helped my consistency the most.
And the next question is, how do you train Flesh and Blood?
I think that getting in-person practice is really valuable. I definitely use Talishar all the time to test with my teammates. We test online, you know, every format that has an event coming up. It's most often classic constructed, of course. But I think that getting in-person games is really valuable, and I have played a lot of armories in my life, and I feel like um, all the time when I'm playing armories, no matter how experienced I already am or anything, it's really, really valuable. Even if, um, even if I feel like I already know the deck I'm playing really well, I'll usually switch to other heroes and take those to the armories. And that's actually something I wish I had done more and am planning to do more in the future. Like once I'm really experienced with a deck, like let's say like right now I've been playing a lot of Azalea. If I'm planning
Mm.
to play Azalea at an upcoming tournament, maybe instead of practicing her more at the armory, I'll bring Levia or some deck that I don't understand quite as well and play that one so that when I play against it as Azalea, I understand it better. Um, so just yeah, kind of as a general answer to this question, I find playing in person with my local community and testing online to be very valuable, and in general, I'm a big fan of practicing heroes, even outside of, like, even if you think you'll never play a hero for a tournament, I think it's still valuable for your skills to play that hero a few times to understand it better.
Mm. That is good. And in that sense, in your experience, what sets apart a good Flesh and Blood player from an excellent one?
Is the question just kind of like, what are some like general tips for like how to be a better Flesh and Blood player?
No, it's the difference between a good player and an excellent player, like a
Oh,
professional player. Because I could be good in some games, but professional is something very different.
I think there are a couple answers to this. One that comes to mind is mastery of multiple formats and maybe multiple things within the game, like for example, being a strong deck builder. I think not being a particularly strong deck builder is perhaps one of the easiest shortcomings to make up for via the help of other people. Like if you're not super experienced with deck building, being on a team or just in a group with someone who is can help you because you can just lean on that or lean on them for their decks. But especially like knowing multiple formats well in the Pro Tours and Worlds that we have right now, we play Classic Constructed and then the latest Booster Draft format. And I think there are some players that are really good at one or the other, um, but when they get to the Pro Tour, they don't quite do as well as they want to because they fall short in the other. And that's something I've been trying to focus on. I have a lot more practice in Classic Constructed than Draft, just in general. So every time a draft set comes out, I've been trying more and more to prioritize my testing time on that. And especially because a lot of the tournaments I travel to, like Battle Hardens, are CC, I find that when I put more effort into finding time to draft, even if that's like the only thing I focus on in my spare time, it ends up being close to 50-50 because I automatically have to play CC so much for these tournaments. So basically, that's answer number one, just like being able to play each format and kind of have a well-rounded set of skills. And then I would also say, a couple things like being able to adapt is a big one for me. This is something I've witnessed at some tournaments. Like a good example that comes to mind is the first World Championship, where in the semifinals, Michael Hamilton played an Icelander mirror and knew that his opponent Arsenal de Diriact, a pretty famous game, where that situation had never come up for him before. It was pretty rare, and he figured out a new game plan on the fly to punish his opponent for that choice and never attacked for the rest of the game. And I think that's actually one of his big strengths. He's kind of demonstrated that in multiple tournaments, being able to adapt new strategies on the fly. And it can come up, especially if you face a strong opponent in Swiss and lose to them, or maybe even you beat them. It doesn't really matter. If you both make the top eight and you play again, maybe they had an unfamiliar strategy, and being able to figure out your plan to counter them in between that Swiss game and the top eight game, that's something that can make or break tournaments as well. So being able to adapt and figure things out on the fly, I think, is a big one that also just really comes with experience. The more situations you're exposed to, the more you're probably going to be able to figure out in the future. Those are two big things.
And how has your family support been in Flesh and Blood? Are they on board? What is the relationship like between you?
I have a very supportive family, which I'm very thankful of. My mom looks at Flesh and Blood kind of the way I do, as a sort of competitive sport and like a passion that I'm chasing, and doesn't see it as like a distraction or something, which I know like that's something that can come up for people a lot with trading card games, is their parents kind of see it as just a game that's distracting and just a hobby, which like I am just really thankful that she has allowed me to chase it to the level that I have, and especially in the beginning, supported me getting to tournaments and building my collection and everything, and really did so much to get me started. I'm really, really appreciative of my mom, and yeah, thankful that my family very much supports me playing Flesh and Blood and cheers me on.
And do you travel with your moms and some tournaments, or you're traveling alone?
It's both. She used to travel with me more, especially when I was still under 18. She would travel with me pretty much everywhere. And now she comes sometimes, and she actually plays Flesh and Blood herself too. So sometimes she'll come and compete in the tournaments. Recently, she's been playing Azalea alongside me. But more recently, I've been traveling more by myself. And of course, now I've made some really good friends who play Flesh and Blood. So I'll travel with people, or at least a lot of times stay with them. Like Michael Fang and I are probably the two that most commonly are going to all the tournaments. So we'll just stay together a lot. And it's cool to like feel like no matter where I go in the world, I kind of have this community and a group of people I can count on, even if, my mom isn't there with me.
Yes, I think that is like a big family with your friends and people that you know thanks to the game. Mm, the next question is something that I always have uh, doubt about this, because you are the person with highest score in the 19 days experience. How did you get that?
So I guess the short answer is just playing a bunch, and the slightly longer answer is I recently, in the last 90 days, have actually been playing armories the least that I ever have, because this year has been busier than ever for me with travel and still finishing up my final year of high school, and just a lot of obligations. So my armory attendance is at an all-time low. Normally, a big part of my answer would be attending armories every day. If I win the armory, that's 9 XP. If I go 2-1, that's 6 XP. And if I'm going like 5 or more days a week, that adds up pretty quickly, and that's a big part of it. And then also just this year, I've been the most consistent that I've ever been in attending pretty much every calling and battle hardened possible. And the battle hardened weekends, especially. you accumulate so much XP, especially in any situation where if I make a top eight, then that one day of play can be up to usually maximum like 11 rounds total, um, which can be upwards of like 70, 80 XP sometimes in a day, which that's on, of course, the higher end, and that doesn't always happen. But the fact that each Battle Hardened weekend you get that on Saturday and Sunday, um, the multiples of just each match win being 6 XP, it just adds up really fast. And I think I just have more of those tournaments that I'm attending than any other player right now. And so that's a big part of why that XP score can just climb so quickly.
Yes. This weekend, you play one tournament on Saturday and you got the top eight. And then on Sunday, you got again top eight. That is so much games. You never get bored with the game. How do you control that?
So for me personally, I've never really felt like I've burned out from Flesh and Blood. I've taken small breaks, especially at the end of a season, just like little resets. But for whatever reason, for me personally, I remember after the first World Championship in 2022, it was the first time that mentally I was like, okay, I'm gonna just take a quick break from Flesh and Blood. And after about 4 days, I was kind of done with my break. I was like, okay, I want to play again. Um, so I don't know what it is. In general, I find I'm a pretty obsessive person. Like I'll find a passion that I'm into and then really latch onto it and pour all my time into it and just try to learn as much as I can. And for the last 2.5 years, that passion has been Flesh and Blood. And I just don't find pretty much anything in the world to be as fun as being at those tournaments competing. And that's I've kind of like structured my whole life around just trying to make it possible to attend as many of these tournaments as possible, and my goal is to be competing at some Flesh and Blood event every weekend, just because for me personally that's like the most fun thing there is to do. So it definitely can be mentally taxing, especially the travel, and I definitely go through periods where I'm more exhausted or not having as much fun maybe with the current format. But despite all of that, I've never hit a point where I feel like I don't want to be playing. It's just I love it so much.
Thank you. In what state would you define the games in terms of the meta, new editions, new players, etc., right now?
I feel like recently the classic constructed meta has been in in a lot of people's opinion probably the best it's ever been. I think there is like a whole debate about what makes a good meta and like which players certain metas are quote unquote good for, but I feel like the most common sentiment I see is that people like it when a lot of heroes are viable and it feels like you could take 10 or more different heroes and all of them are a reasonable choice. And I would say that that has been very true for the last 5 months or so. So I feel like the meta is um, very fun in that sense. There are a lot of heroes viable. There are a lot of things to prepare for, which can be um, a, a bit of a load to make sure you get a plan for all of those matchups. But ultimately, I think it makes more people really excited to compete in this meta because there's that many more heroes that have a community of specialists that feel like this could be their time. So I feel like the meta is good. I feel like um, as far as like the kind of general state of the game and new players, I am really happy every time I see like kind of new communities springing up all over the world. People are still constantly getting into Flesh and Blood. Just seeing that you guys have like an awesome Flesh and Blood scene down there in Chile, that's something that like made me happy to see, and I was excited to do this interview just because like I it makes me really happy to just see the game growing and see these different communities that maybe I can visit one day, if there were to ever be a Battle Harden or something there, especially a calling in South America, I would absolutely love to go. So, in general, just I feel really happy with where Flesh and Blood is at and the steps they're taking to continue to grow the OP system and draw more players in.
Yes, you respond my last question because my last question was if you will be interested in playing a tournament here. And you say that yes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've never been to South America yet. I almost went to the Battle Harden in Brazil last year, but I ended up going to a different tournament that same weekend. I think maybe it was Calling Taipei. I don't remember if that was the same weekend. But yeah, long story short, especially if there's a calling there, I'll be there. Even a Battle Hardened, depending on the weekend and the circumstances, I would really enjoy going down there for a tournament.
It means a lot for us, for the community in Chile. Finally, I just want to give you a space for send a message like you do before, but this will be recorded in this interview.
Yeah, first of all, it's my pleasure to come on. Thank you guys for having me for this interview. I hope you guys continue to see the Flesh and Blood scene in Chile grow and, fire more armories, have bigger armories, and grow to the point that, you have battle hardens there. And even if you don't, maybe you get the opportunity to travel for battle hardens and bigger tournaments. I am just really excited to see Flesh and Blood growing in places all over the world like that. And I really hope to meet you guys in person one day at a Flesh and Blood tournament. Thank you.
Thank you. Hola a todos, espero que hayan disfrutado el video. La verdad que fue un rato bastante agradable para nosotros. Brodie con una disposición de oro para poder compartir con nosotros un ratito. Muy amable en todo lo que nos explicaba, las cosas que nos decía. Esperemos que también este video pueda ayudar no solo a jugadores que quieran participar en los armories que se están haciendo acá en Santiago, sino que también a aquellos que están interesados en poder quizás hacer de esto una carrera un poquito más competitiva. Así que esperamos que haya sido de su gusto y nos vemos en el siguiente video.